Hello everyone and welcome to Mad About History. In a previous video I spoke about the Ford Model A, the second ever production car that Ford made. Today I'm going to talk about the Ford Model T, the first ever mass-produced production car in the world. Henry Ford had the idea of making a car that was affordable, easy to drive and durable, and so he came up with the idea of the Ford Model T. The Ford Model T has a wooden body covered with a thin layer of metal, wooden wheels. The engine is a 3.9 flathead 4-cylinder engine and it has 2 gears. Produced in 1908, the first Model T went to its first customer on the 1st of October in 1908, making the Ford Model T 115 years old. This model here is a 1915 model, so that makes it 108 years old. There's a very famous saying that came with the Ford Model T: you could have any colour you wanted as long as it was black. As this was the first mass-produced production car, they needed an easy colour for it to come off nice and quickly, and so black was the colour you got. But on special request you could still get different colours, but they had to be hand painted instead of these ones that were done on the assembly line. One of the things that I love is this luggage holder. You can have it long and you can have it short depending on how big the luggage was, but how cool is it that your luggage was just stored on the side of the car? Over 15 million Model Ts were made during its time, and there are still many around today that still work just like this one. Now you might have heard me say assembly line, production line. That's because the production line, the assembly line, was invented for the Model T, and that alone revolutionized industry. This assembly line, this production line, allowed Model Ts to be made in mass, and that allowed it to keep the price down. When they first were released, they're around $850 back in 1908, but over a few years that price came all the way down to $250. So it was a very affordable car, which made it very accessible to your everyday American. Production of the Ford Model T ended in 1927, and there was an actual ceremony to celebrate the life of the Model T. And then in 1927, its successor, the Ford Model A, was released. Here's a nice funny little story about the Ford Model T. Back in the early days in the state of Kansas when this came out, there was only 2 roads, and 2 Model Ts crashed into each other at the only intersection on one of those roads. Another crazy thing about the Ford Model T, well, I find crazy, is there's no speedometer, so you just have to guess how fast you were going, but I don't think they had to worry because there was no speed cameras back then. In 1923, the first ever 24-hour Le Mans race took place. A souped-up Ford Model T took part in that first ever Le Mans and came 14th. So that was the Ford Model T, the first ever mass production car in the world, a car that changed history.